Imagine this for a second. You're maybe in your late 30s, you're juggling work, maybe getting kids to activity, just keeping up with everything. And then, on top of all that, you're managing a chronic health condition. Could be diabetes, maybe heart disease, even something like severe asthma. You need regular care, specific meds, monitoring. Yeah, just to stay healthy, right? To keep up. But then you look at your health plan. It's one of those high deductible health plans, an HDHP. Maybe you picked it because the monthly payment was lower, and you realize that high deductible means you're paying a lot out of pocket for that essential regular care. Before your insurance really even starts helping with the big stuff, it can feel like this huge wall, making you choose between health stuff and, well, everything else. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take essential information, cut through the jargon, and make it make sense for you. Today, we are diving into H.R. 919. The official name is the Chronic Disease Flexible Coverage Act. It's from the current 119th Congress. Our goal: to really unpack what this bill actually means for you, especially if you, or maybe someone in your family, is dealing with a chronic condition day to day. Basically, this bill is trying to make it easier to get that vital preventive care for chronic diseases under certain health plans before you hit that high deductible. It's really about taking down some of those barriers, letting you stay on top of your health. Okay, so let's unpack this thing. It might sound like, dense Washington speak, but really it's about practical changes, how your plan covers critical care. Our info today is straight from the source, congress.gov, gives us a direct line of sight. And to help us navigate this, we have our expert with us.
Thanks. Yeah, it's fascinating, really, how what seems like a small technical change in the law can actually have such a huge impact on how people manage their health every single day. For a lot of folks, this is the difference between getting consistent care or, constantly having to worry about the cost of essential medicine versus other family needs.
Absolutely. So maybe let's just set the scene first. High deductible health plans, HDHPs. Many of you listening probably have one. They've become really common. Part of that is, yes, the lower monthly premium, which can really help the budget, especially for families or younger people starting out. And they usually come paired with a health savings account, an HSA, which, has great tax benefits, saving and spending pre-tax dollars on health costs. But there's always that high deductible piece of the puzzle.
And that's exactly where the problem often popped up for people managing chronic illnesses. Under the current rules, to even be eligible for an HSA and get those tax perks, your HDHP has to have a deductible over a certain amount. It's a minimum threshold, and it actually goes up a bit each year. The original thinking behind that structure was sort of to make people more aware of healthcare costs, engage them more, maybe make more cost-conscious choices. But as you can imagine, if you need insulin every day or you rely on an inhaler to breathe, well, making choices about that essential medicine isn't really a choice at all.
Exactly. It's not like you're choosing to want insulin. You just need it. And that's where it got tricky. Because even with those HDHP rules, plans could already cover some things labeled preventive care before you met the deductible. Think of it like a fast pass for your annual physical, maybe certain shots, standard stuff. The challenge, though, for someone managing diabetes or asthma was, what exactly is preventive when it's about managing something you already have? Was taking your daily heart pill preventative if the deductible wasn't met? That definition felt, well, murky.
That murky area wasn't just confusing language, it meant real stress and tough choices for people. Patients, families, they were kind of stuck. They knew the standard preventive stuff was covered from day one, but for them, preventative meant their daily meds, their regular blood sugar checks, not just a yearly checkup. And the cost of those things, paid completely out of pocket until that big deductible was finally met. That was a huge burden. It really created situations where people might delay care or even ration their medicine, not because they didn't want to be healthy, but because paying thousands up front just wasn't feasible.
Right. And this is where, maybe surprisingly, the IRS gets involved, the Internal Revenue Service. You think taxes, right? But remember, HSAs and HDHPs have tax rules tied to them, so the IRS has a say. And the IRS actually issued guidance, this was really important, that expanded the definition of preventive care specifically for these situations. This was a critical move because it basically gave HDHPs the green light to cover more services, more medications for chronic conditions without needing the deductible met first. It was like an administrative fix, recognizing that managing a chronic illness is prevention, preventing worse outcomes, preventing hospital visits, preventing much higher costs later on.
Yeah, that guidance was, almost revolutionary in a quiet administrative way. It gave that much-needed clarity. Health plans could cover these essential things right away. Before that, there was this uncertainty. Plans were maybe hesitant, worried they might mess up their HDHP status or their members' HSA eligibility if they covered too much pre-deductible. So the IRS stepped in to sort of untangle that mess, saying, look, managing the condition is preventing bigger problems. It wasn't a new law passed by Congress at that point, just an interpretation by the IRS.
Yeah.
But wow, a powerful one for access to care. It really helped bridge the gap between traditional preventive care and the everyday, ongoing management needed for chronic conditions.
So, okay, we had this really helpful IRS guidance, a lifeline for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Huge step forward. It meant people with certain chronic diseases could get their necessary care, manage things proactively, avoid complications without that huge deductible hit right away. But administrative rules, well, they can change. A new administration, different interpretations.
Yeah.
They aren't set in stone.
There's always that possibility.
Which left this kind of lingering worry, right? How do you make sure such an important benefit is actually secure for the long haul? And that's exactly where HR 919 comes in. This bill, the Chronic Disease Flexible Coverage Act, is basically taking that helpful IRS guidance and saying, okay, this needs to be permanent, making it actual law. It provides what's called statutory authority for the guidance.
And connecting that to the bigger picture, giving it statutory authority, means it's not just an agency's interpretation anymore. It can't just be easily changed or taken back down the line. Think about the uncertainty before. Plans, patients, everyone wondering if maybe next year the rules would flip back. Would people suddenly face paying thousands again for their insulin? This bill isn't just about making it stable, it's really about providing genuine security, removing that worry hanging over millions of people. It gets written into the law books, provides certainty. It's Congress basically saying, yes, this approach makes sense, this coverage is valuable, let's make it a lasting part of our healthcare policy.
And just briefly, on its path so far, HR 919, it was sponsored by Representative Buchanan, who's a Republican from Florida, introduced back on February 4th, 2025. And it moved pretty quickly through the House, passed on March 4th by what's called a voice vote.
Which often suggests broad agreement.
Exactly. Suggests a good amount of bipartisan support, which is usually a good sign. Now, it's over in the Senate with their Committee on Finance for review. The speed it moved with initially does show there seems to be real momentum behind locking this in. Okay, now let's get into the specifics. This is where it really hits home for people. What exactly are we talking about? What counts as this expanded preventive care? The IRS list, the one this bill makes official, it covers some really crucial things. This might be where you have that aha moment thinking about your own family or maybe a friend, especially if you're, say, a parent managing a kid's condition or trying to balance your own health needs with a busy job.
Yeah, the list is pretty solid. It targets really common conditions, things that affect a lot of people, definitely including folks in that 25 to 50 range we mentioned.
Okay.
Let's break it down a bit. First, for heart health and diabetes, sort of the cardiovascular area, you've got ACE inhibitors, that's angiotensin-converting enzyme inhibitors, really important for congestive heart failure, diabetes, coronary artery disease. Then beta blockers, another key medication class for heart failure or coronary artery disease. Also, blood pressure monitors for hypertension, high blood pressure. Imagine having to track that daily, but it not being covered up front.
Right.
LDL testing, that's the bad cholesterol test, vital for managing heart disease risk. And statins, very common cholesterol-lowering drugs used for heart disease or diabetes. Then, specifically for diabetes management, this is huge. Insulin, obviously, and other glucose-lowering drugs. Non-negotiable for so many.
Absolutely essential.
Retinopathy screening, checking for eye damage. There's a really serious diabetes complication. Glucometers for checking blood sugar at home. That's key for daily self-management. And hemoglobin A1C tests, the ones that give you the longer-term blood sugar picture. All just critical tools to prevent really severe outcomes. Vision loss, kidney problems, amputations. Moving on, for bone health, it covers anti-resorptive therapy. That's for osteoporosis or osteopenia, conditions that weaken bones, increasing fracture risk, especially as we get older. For respiratory issues, and this affects kids and adults, it includes inhaled corticosteroids and peak flow meters for asthma.
That's a big one for parents.
Definitely. Knowing your child's inhaler is covered right away, huge relief. Then for certain blood and liver conditions, there's INR testing, International Normalized Ratio testing. That's covered for liver disease or bleeding disorders, helps get medication dosing right. And significantly, it also covers SSRI's selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors for treating depression.
That's really important to include.
It is. Mental health often gets sidelined, but having access to these meds without that deductible barrier can be absolutely life-changing for someone juggling work, family, and their mental well-being.
Wow. That's not just a list. It feels like a toolkit for managing some of the most common, serious chronic conditions people face. Every single one of those items can be a lifesaver, or at least critical for just living well day to day. This isn't about waiting for a crisis. It's covering the everyday things that prevent the crisis, that stop conditions from spiraling, all before the deductible is met. It really empowers people, especially those in the thick of careers and raising families, to handle their health proactively, instead of just reacting when things get bad, and usually way more expensive.
And that proactive piece is exactly why this matters so much. So why does this specific bill matter to you listening? Well, for so many adults, say 25 to 50, you're working hard, maybe raising kids, doing both. Managing a chronic condition, your own or maybe a child's or partner's, is just part of life, often an unseen part. This bill means that essential preventive management for those conditions could be there from day one, accessible immediately. Without that big financial hurdle of the deductible staring you down, it basically makes the care you need to prevent things from getting worse just as easy to access as your yearly physical. Takes away a major stressor.
Yeah, think about the peace of mind there. If you or your kid has asthma, needing that inhaler, it shouldn't be a budget calculation every month. If you have diabetes, needing insulin, test strips, A1C checks,
Yeah.
those aren't optional extras, they're fundamental. Before looking at a deductible of, what, $5,000, $7,000 maybe, that could genuinely mean delaying buying those things, which leads directly to worse health, ER visits, missed work, missed school. This bill helps make sure those critical items are covered right away. Yes, it saves you potentially significant money out of pocket, but maybe even more importantly, it helps you stay healthier. Helps you avoid those serious complications, later kidney failure, blindness, heart attacks. It makes proactive health something that's actually financially possible for regular families.
Exactly right. For anyone juggling work, budgets, health worries, this kind of flexibility, this upfront coverage, it really can be a game changer. It means you're less likely to face that awful choice between managing your health properly and paying other essential bills. It takes a layer of financial anxiety out of making health decisions. People can follow their doctor's advice based on medical need, not just immediate cost. And in the long run, that helps everyone, the individual, sure, but also the whole healthcare system by cutting down on those expensive preventable emergencies.
Okay, so let's quickly recap our deep dive here. HR 919, the Chronic Disease Flexible Coverage Act. It takes that really important IRS guidance, the guidance that let high-deductible health plans cover more preventive care for chronic conditions before the deductible, and makes that guidance permanent law, statutory authority. This covers a wide, really impactful range of treatments, medications, monitoring tools for things like diabetes, heart disease, asthma, osteoporosis, even depression. It's basically Congress locking in a way to make proactive chronic care more accessible, more affordable, giving people much-needed certainty. Now, this bill, it really shines a light on a bigger conversation, doesn't it, about preventive care when so many people have high deductibles. And as healthcare policy keeps changing, it leaves us with a thought to chew on. This bill addresses a specific, really important need. But what other kinds of routine essential care might still be stuck behind that deductible wall? How could more policies like this one continue to shift the landscape, make vital care even more accessible, really move the focus towards long-term health and wellness instead of just reacting when someone's already sick? What else could help empower you, your family, to prioritize health without those crushing financial barriers? Something to think about.